Hey ladies, I am your host Yvette Lloyd, and I would like to welcome Nina Sonovia. Hi Nina, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
So I am in the field of neural and biofeedback. I'm a clinician by heart, but a teacher and educator for life. And what I mean by that is I have a private practice where I see individuals and I teach them how to use bio and neural feedback to regulate emotion. My passion is working with women. I like to say, with the double X brain because of the chromosomes, and I love working with women and empowering women to know that they can show up the best version of themselves. And one way that I like to help women do that is through emotional regulation. And the
Wow.
tools I use are neural and biofeedback to do that.
Okay, so could you give me a little more information and explain to the women a light term of biofeedback?
Yes. So oftentimes in my private practice, I'll use devices, but what I really like doing is illustrating and showing tools and tips to help an individual self-regulate. So let's say we're currently in a stressful situation right now. So what is one way that we can calm our systems? What is one tool that we can calm our systems? We can look at several things. Some people might go on a mindfulness walk where they're just walking and listening to nature. I'm not a big nature outdoor person that way. So I had to find tools that I can give to individuals that were varied, right? So a nature walk. Another tool that I really enjoy, and I don't always enjoy it, but I do it every day. It's a tool that I use and I share with people to use to calm their vagus nerve. Our vagus nerve is the Audubon for our system, our fight or flight system. Our fight or flight system can be explained as a system that helps us get out of danger or assess danger when we see things as a threat. And so we'll either freeze in that moment to assess it, or we'll flee from that moment. So fight or flight is one thing that helps us actually respond to stress in a way that will allow us to be more resilient or less resilient. So one tool I like to share is in calming the vagus nerve is to take a 30-second, this is going to sound really bizarre, but hang in there, a
Okay.
30-second shower while showering. So after the shower, you take a shower daily or in the evening or how frequently you take a shower, and just use 30 seconds of cold water.
Ooh.
And I know people are like, exactly, woo. And it is designed to do that to your system. It sends your system almost into a shock
Shock.
response.
That's what you're gonna say. It's like a shock response.
Yeah, and that shock response, then it calms down. And I promise you, on the other side of that shock response is calm. And we need calm to do things, right? We need calm to show up for ourselves. We need calm to show up for our families. We need calm to show up at work. We need calm to get in our car or get on the train or commute into our jobs. And so we need calm in every day. And that's one of the ways that you can actually calm your system. And the net effect of that, which is really interesting, is that you get an hour of calm after doing that 30 seconds. Now you can also cheat by just putting I teach psychology courses to college students, and one of the college students told me that she's been using a wet towel on her face and that to get that same effect. So
Okay.
that's just like a tip to use just a wet towel, right? You could just go and wet a towel or a paper towel and a cold towel, and then just put it on your neck and face to calm yourself down. Because we need this in this time. We need our systems to do that so that we can make executive decisions, so that we can make the best decisions for ourselves, whether it's discussing the decision for a family, whether it's to go out or not in this current climate. So, yeah, so that's one tip I like sharing with people because we all get that same response. Ooh, and I do it daily, and I still get that same response. But I know on the other side of that is calm.
Oh, wow. So, how long have you been doing this line of work?
I have been doing this line of work for over 10 years.
Wow.
Yes, and this was way before your listeners, ladies, you may have heard of mindfulness. This was before mindfulness was quote unquote sexy and open to the masses. I just realized that for me, I'd come from, so I was born and raised in Los Angeles, in South Central Los Angeles, and I grew up in a toxic stress environment. And I knew that the toxicity from which I'd grown up in, it never impacted my ability to think and to function in school. I went to college at an earlier age than most students, and it never impacted school. And because I wasn't acting out in school, because I wasn't a bad student, no one ever asked of me what happened to this child. I look at my childhood photos and I was never smiling. And now I smile every chance I get. But I got into this work because I knew that the decisions that I was making in my life in relationships, emotionally laboring through careers, I just knew that I didn't have to live that life. And then I found about 10 years ago this study from the CDC, which we're all familiar with, the Center of Disease Control, and Kaiser Permanente did a study in 1995. And they specifically talked about adverse childhood experiences. And there's a scale of 10 things. And if you had 2 of those things, you were more likely to have, maybe disease in your future as an adult. If you had 4 of those things, maybe it was going to cut your lifespan short. These predictors on the study of 18,000 people. And I had 6 out of the 10 on that scale.
Wow.
Of adverse childhood experiences. Yeah.
Wow.
And I knew that if I didn't do something different, chronic disease was going to set in, and I was going to not have the quality of life that I wanted, because the adverse childhood experience that happened to me between 0 and 18 years of age was going to impact what my life looked like. And so I went to the bookstore, and I had my master's in cognitive development, but I was really intrigued with this concept that there's something in neuroscience and how things connect that can help us improve our emotional regulation. And I taught myself every brain pattern, every part of the brain that I could. And I started teaching other people about brain patterns and neuroscience and biofeedback and heart-brain connection and how we can live our best life. And that's how I got into this work.
Wow. So to be more transparent about your childhood, could you share with some of our listeners what were some of the struggles that you had dealt with in the past of the little girl who you used to be?
Absolutely. I was molested by an uncle.
Wow.
I was in that childhood molestation. I just was this very unhappy child. I grew up in a household where I had adult supporters that were in and out, not all of them, but one that was in and out of the the penal system, the jail system.
Okay.
I had endured black on black crime of family members and people that were close to our family that had killed family members. Wow. And yet I was still functioning, right? I was going to college at an early age. I was performing, but I was emotionally laboring through that.
So
and
how
did
you...
what I mean by that is I was just putting my head down and suppressing everything that had to do with that pain just to get through every single day, every single month, every single semester.
Okay. That's why I was getting ready to ask you, like, how did you deal with so much of that and still maintain to stay focused as a young child?
Without drugs.
Okay.
I was able to do it, I think, because I was surviving. In the recesses of our primal brain, I was treating every single day as an opportunity to assess, is this a threat or not? And the one place that wasn't a threat for me was an education system. Adults were appropriate. I had a role, and all I had to do was execute.
Did you have anyone to push you and motivate you to stay focused and get your education and not live the product of your environment?
I didn't have to because education was my safe place.
Okay.
And as a result of it being my safe place, there was no motivation. Because if you think about how people are motivated to learn or how people are motivated to move forward, if you think about operant conditioning, we're conditioned to want more of what's rewarding us.
Mm-hmm.
And so education was very easy for me. The adults were appropriate, right? So there was no threat of someone trying to touch me. There was no threat of, an adult was appropriate. A teacher was a teacher, I was a student, and you did that role. And I got good grades, and I really enjoyed learning. And so the fallacy, the mistake is that if something has happened to a child, it's going to always show up in the educational system. And that wasn't the case for me. So no one ever asked what happened to this child.
Mm-hmm. So did anyone know that you were molested?
No. I didn't even realize that I was molested until I was going through my master's program as a young adult, early young adult.
Wow.
And repressed memories came back up, and I couldn't squash them back down. They just emerged, and I couldn't squash them back down, and I went on this quest for truth. And as a result of that quest for truth, I went back to adult supporters and my family and started talking to individuals, and they just they didn't know where to place it, and I didn't know where to place it, because once you come out, right, you're just like, I've got to find and speak the truth. And then I realized that once I knew this, that there were already imprints into my brain, imprints into my subconscious mind, that I was never going to forget any of that. So I had to really go in and rewire everything about my brain, everything about relationships, everything about threat, everything about potentially wanting to have a healthy relationship with a male. I had to rewire all of that. And that's when I just held on to neuroscience and the potential and the ability of our brain to rewire and create new neural pathways. And I don't want to say voila, because this is over a 10-year journey. But,
right.
Here I am teaching other people about patterns and getting out of ruts and how to move forward, how to keep pressing to your goals.
Yes, I can highly agree with that, due to the fact last year was my tough year. I lost my mother, my husband's mother, and just going through that path of so much, it was more or less, my favorite saying is, turn your pain into power, and not letting everything consume you mentally, because sometimes when we carry things mentally, our body reacts to it, our thoughts react to it, our spirit, it affects every portion of our whole body.
Yes.
It really do.
Absolutely.
And if we carry that,
Absolutely.
That's what creates a form of mental health.
Exactly.
Wow. So so do you specialize in mental health as well, since you're so informative about
it's really
the brain?
Interesting because I specialize more in resilience.
Okay.
And part of that is the mental health, it's the cognitive health part. It's really teaching individuals how to rewire. And it's not easy, right? Because we want to default back to what is familiar. And so the things like calming your system down with taking a 30-second cold shower to calm your system down. So as you're learning new behaviors, you're stretching yourself to stay in that format, versus if you're stressed, you're going to default to what is familiar. And so I guess, yeah, I do teach mental health and I do focus on mental health, but my specialty is resilience building and emotional regulation.
Okay, yeah, because it can help in many ways. Do you have any, like, different things that someone could use at home to control their mental state of mind and just practice self-care on a daily basis?
Absolutely. So I would suggest that the coach, or we were going to say whatever, but please reach out and let Yvette and myself, if you're interested, know, like, how did that work for you? Also, I have found, so because of my childhood trauma and because of the physical childhood trauma, the deep breathing, like, I love yoga, but it took me years, probably 15 years, maybe 15 years to be able to deep breathe in a yoga session, because I want to teach you this. And ladies, listen to this closely. When we breathe in, it sends our stress response in our central nervous system into a very active mode. Most often it is saying, this is not a normal breathing pattern. Why is she taking all these deep breaths? Are we about to flee something? Are we about to fight something? Or do we need to start assessing threat? So when we take that deep breath in, it might stimulate more shallow breathing. Like, I can't catch my breath. I can't breathe like that. But the exhale out of that deep breath is the calming breath. So oftentimes, now that I've learned to breathe by using a breathing coach, physically I had to literally learn how to breathe. And I've been doing this work for over a decade, but I had to learn how to breathe over the last couple of years because of the past trauma. Mm-hmm. Not that it was making me recall it, but my body was responding like, what is she trying to do, right?
Right.
And so I take a deep breath, and when I can't breathe anymore, I take 3 sips. 3 more sips of breath, because we always have the capacity to do more. And then once I get to that top level, I just calmly release the breath. So if you can't do a breathing exercise, so we talked about one way to kind of, as to shock our system into a calmer state is a 30-second of running into the cold shower after a shower. The other thing is breathing. But what I want to say to you is these are tools. These are tools that you can just pull out of a toolbox. Like, deep breathing didn't work for me for many, many, many years because of the trauma. And it was sending my body into more trauma. Wow. And so I could relax my legs, my arms, my jaw. I could relax my body, but I couldn't relax my system. So sometimes I'd walk out of yoga and I was more stressed than when I went in.
Oh, wow.
And so the breathing, I'm just teaching you how all of our system is connected mentally, physiologically, and breathing will sometimes, depending on what you're experiencing or going through at the moment or have experienced, it might trigger some things. So if deep breathing doesn't work, another thing that you can do if you've had a lot of trauma in your life, even though my focus is in trauma, I've done research on how we respond to trauma, is a technique called grounding. And basically, whether you're on a walk, in a room, you could just say, I'm going to identify 5 things in this room. It might be an orange, curtain. It might be a green pillow. It might be a plant. It might identify those 5 things to ground you back into the present moment.
Wow.
And then any stressors, any emotions are just a state of being. As long as you don't label them, you're able to catch them. So the grounding, I'll use the grounding. Sometimes since I'm learning how to breathe, I've learned how to breathe, I'll use a different color, label my breathing, only my breathing, not the emotion. I may breathe in green and breathe out blue.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so how can you explain to women how important self-love and self-care is for you to achieve all of these accomplishments, to deal with mental health or dealing with, receiving the biofeedback in your brain?
Yeah, absolutely. So you might say, I can't do that, Nina. I can't do that because I don't have devices. I haven't invested in devices. The tools I'm giving you are absent of any devices. It really is the biology, the bio feedback that your body is giving you as it relates to stress. And I think the importance of loving oneself, that doesn't come automatically, right? Like,
Yes, it
I
takes
taught myself
time.
about 17 years ago. I heard one of my younger cousins, my cousin is his grandmother, and he was laughing. He was about 4 months old, and I asked what that was. I said, what is that? We were on the phone having a conversation, and she said, that is the baby laughing. And I said, I'm going to teach myself that. I'm going to teach myself how to laugh at just like that. One day, one moment a day for 7 days a week. And then it ended up being a year. And then it ended up being 5 years, 10 years. And every single day I laughed like a baby. I just saw something that I wanted, and I just said, I'm going to borrow that until I have it.
Yes.
Because I was processing the things that were kind of these anchors. And so I find one thing, and part of that is just, sometimes it's laughing at myself, sometimes it's laughing at a memory, sometimes it's laughing at whatever, but this self-love is so important, although it won't come overnight because it's the rewiring of old patterns and thoughts and behaviors that help us get there. So even when I didn't know how to laugh like that, I just borrowed that from this infant. Wow. Until I do it every single day for the last, over a decade.
Wow. And that's so good.
Every single day.
And sometimes people don't understand how much laughter is just so good for you.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
And so when you talk about mental health, the fastest way to create those new neural pathways to make behavior stick is to learn something new.
Okay. So what, as far as the brain waves, right? How does the brain waves work? Like when someone is dealing with stress or they're trying to maintain both stress and being calm at the same time?
So the brain waves are always working. They don't judge and decide to work when you're stressed or not stressed. Our brain waves are always going. So if someone ever said, shut it off, shut your brain off, and you can go to sleep, that's not happening. Our brain waves are always active. Some are more active than others. So when we're in a more relaxed state, we'll have brain waves that are not as active, don't have as much energy. When we're in a more activated state, or maybe we're going up for a promotion, or we're going up for a job that we want, or we're, wanting something to really happen in our life, and so we kind of think about it a lot, and that brainwave will come forward. So the way I like to explain brainwaves is that if we think about the neck, the head and the neck connection, that's going to be kind of the earliest development of brain development, and we're thinking structure now, right? But that's also because it's the earliest, it's our primal part. It's our what we call reptilian part. That's where our fight or flight response is. So that's going to happen automatically. You don't have to go and say, there are 5 young people walking around looking in cars, and now they're approaching my car. That fight or flight's going to kick in. You're either going to go after it, step back, or you're going to freeze to assess what they're going to do to the car, right? And so the next part, if you take your brain into 3 sections, that back part, kind of where most people have their hook, that connection to the neck, is going to be where you find like your, what we call reticular activating system, and your fight or flight. Some of your emotions are in there, memories. That's why it's important, if you want something different, you have to create the new memories. I wanted to learn how to laugh as smile. I always wanted that, so I borrowed it from that baby, taught myself that, and then it became a new behavior. So in that section of the brain, it leads us to then that kind of middle part where deep inside are those emotions and those memories. That's why in those emotions and memories, when it comes to our senses, smell, taste, hearing, sight, that's why we can hear someone say something about us and it will stick forever.
Wow.
Because our sensory memory in the middle part, if you think ear to ear, that band is deep inside, those emotions stick when they come from our memory. So you can smell something that maybe was a comfort food that was cooking, when your mom used to cook, or a perfume, and it will take you right back to that memory. Just whether it's good or bad, the brain doesn't judge. Our brain waves don't judge. Just these are the functions. And so we try and use to change behavior, and we think about mental health and going after the life you want. We know that we want to turn off that part of the brain that's connected to the neck. We want to turn that off, and we want to access that middle part of the brain, those memories, right? And we want to be able to access the next part of the brain, the front part of the brain, the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex, the frontal lobe. That's where we're making very sound decisions. So if you can imagine, if you can't be fearful and make great decisions. So if you turn off that back part, and you've got some good memories that you are a good provider, you are a good mom, you are a good wife, you are a good sister, you are a good employee, you are a good citizen, you can then turn that into good decision making.
Wow. So that kind of ties into I used to want to be a brain surgeon years ago. I believe the terminology is serotonin. It's like the hormones of the brain, and it like keeps you calm and focused. Is that what it's called?
Oh, serotonin. Yeah. It's a neurotransmitter. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what keeps you calm and focused too, right?
And happy. Yeah.
Yes, and that's where a lot of people can really focus on doing that. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is your gym brain.
The gym brain.
Yes, I had saw on your Instagram page that you had something about gym brain. It's in the in your bio. It's
so I do. I don't think it is gym brain. It's just, yeah. So I do heart rate variability training.
Okay.
And yeah, heart rate variability training. This is really fascinating for those that are wondering, what about this brain-body connection? Our heart has its own intelligence center that we found out over the last 40 years. So the stuff we're talking about, well, psychology has been around for years. And then this whole neuroscience, biofeedback version of psychology is relatively new over the last 40 to 35 years. And we're seeing more and more science. So this kind of feedback from our body, feedback from performance, is really centered not in the brain, but in the heart.
Okay.
So heart rate variability measures, for years and years and years, we used heart rate variability in society to measure performance and to help elite athletes get an extra push, extra inch out of every performance that they were going for. Imagine Olympians wanting the best performance out of their body. So they would use this technique in order to do that.
Okay.
Well, I started using heart rate variability about 9 years ago to get that same performance out of emotion and mental health.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so what we're looking at is not the heartbeat.
Okay.
We're looking at the measurements in between the heartbeat to tell us if you're ready to take on the stress of the day or not. And what you see is a lot of numbers and colors and charts and I'll say things like on my Instagram page, I'll say things like, my system was responding, and so I focused on nutrition and sleep, or my system was doing this, and so if you would think it would be about gym performance, but it really is about emotional performance using a device that we used to use for gym performance only.
Okay. Wow. That's really nice. So, out of you gaining so much knowledge and education throughout your years and making sure that you accomplish all of your goals from your childhood to now, do you feel like you broke the cycle within your family?
Absolutely. I don't think that, I don't know for a fact that the things that I endured were cyclical, right? And I'll say that because I didn't see it penetrate the layers in my family.
Okay, that's good. Oh yeah, it makes sense.
I think that some of the environmental things were happening that we see complete changes. We have individuals that have gone, on to other things and made other decisions than what some of the adult supporters of my life as a child. But we cannot discount epigenetics in that factory.
Right.
And what I mean about epigenetics is the genetic encoding of what trauma does for generations to come, that for people in your family that you may never even meet.
Right. And that's more in depth because a lot of people go by their immediate family, the ones that they grew up with and been around every day, instead of digging deep into the family tree and seeing who else has done what in the family. So you really shed light to that terminology as far as breaking cycles in your family history, to a point where it's deeper than just what you see in front of you, because you may be taking after someone else in the family that you never met before.
Yeah, and it could have been their stress response, right? So let's say that someone lived through a Great Depression, and their stress response was stunted because it happened when they were 7, and then that lack of development, as you talked about, in terms of their neurotransmitters and neurons, didn't fully develop because it happened before their brain was fully developed. Now they've passed that on to the next generation, so the next generation might be responding to a stressful situation as if they were in the past.
Okay.
If they have to rewire those things when you find out this behavior isn't serving me, right? Being a very anxious person wasn't serving me if I wanted to really go out and thrive in my life. What was it to learn to laugh if I was going to be anxious and scared and fearful of everything? So I had to rewire that in order to really go after life with a capital L-I-F-E.
Okay, yes. I love that. So, how is life like being a professor? Do you really enjoy it?
I do, and my worlds don't separate. So I'm what I call a neuro nerd. I love neuroscience, and I bring it into everything that I am, everything that I do. And so my students are always pushed to know their stress numbers. And a part of what we do there is I give them an assessment. They know their numbers. They learn their numbers. They learn tools on how to self-regulate. They learn tools on how to actually teach others, master how to self-regulate, and then they have to teach us one tool to the group of students. We did presentations last evening, so I do a pre and post, and then I just kind of anecdotally go over the numbers, and like last semester, this semester, about 56% of the class are doing nothing else but understanding those numbers and having an awareness of how to self-regulate and manage their own mental health their numbers either went up or they stayed flat.
Oh, wow.
And so they brought in things like they're starting to do what do you call the books? Like the drawing books where you coloring
yeah,
books.
like you're doodling in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mindfulness walks. They're listening to music. They're not quite there with the taking, the 30-second shower, but that's okay. I understand it's not for everyone. And then we know our numbers, and they're very aware, and they are very articulate in communicating why that number went up, why that number went down, and what they've done to decrease it or try and decrease it. And so I love the role of professor for that reason. By nature, my family for over 200 years have been educators, and I'm an educator by heart. And so to be able to teach level 2 psychology classes to individuals that may or may not pursue the field of psychology, I start every session by saying psychology is everywhere. Everywhere.
Yes, it
and
is.
We're going to break it down, and we're going to teach you how to understand how it permeates young people and older people in society, and understand why it's important, why it should be important to you, and why it's so important to thriving instead of surviving.
Yes. Have you ever heard of PACE? PAC? It's like it's a PACE test, and it's like a web, and you explain, you tell a story about yourself. It's like a story web it'll create into that. You ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
It is really,
I have not.
it's really neat. I'm gonna have to send it to you because it's a web, and it analyzes and it turns into something of what you've said about yourself, and it goes on its highs and lows, and it measures your feelings. It's really really cool. I'm gonna have to email that to you. I had took it, and I was taking a course, a leadership course at Harvard, and it was really really nice. It was a nice thing, and I'm gonna send it to you because that might be something you would like to do with your students, because it's still focused on self-care and understanding who you are.
P as in Paul, A as in apple, C as in cat.
PACE.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm gonna send that to you because it helped me out personally, and I took a stress test before too.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a stress test.
So you get it. So I make them know there. I don't play around with that. I always say, if you had a chronic disease, you would know your number. And the students that I'm working with are students that aren't always right out of high school. They're adult learners, and we just don't take the time to do that for ourselves. So I create a space, a very brave space, to explore that.
Okay. Wow. That's interesting. So, we're getting ready to wrap it up. So, in closing, what's a few words that you could tell our listeners on what can help them heal themselves within?
I think be very kind. Know that you are here not because of what you've done today, but because of your brain patterns and what you've done over time. And to reverse that doesn't happen overnight. And to be very kind, and to get sleep. If you read anything, if you remember anything, rest, sleep is very, very important for restoring and repairing.
Okay. That's something.
And that's what I would share.
That's something I had to practice on. Getting sleep myself. So how can our listeners get in touch with you?
I can be found on Instagram at Nina, Nina, Sonovia, S as in Sam, ONOVIA. V as in Victor, IA. And I can also be found at my website for my company. It's Solonco, S as in Sam, OLONCO.com.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for everyone for tuning in to Life Her Podcast, where we help heal women all over the world. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and watch our YouTube page of different videos and interviews that we produce. I am Yvette Lloyd. I am Life Her. Love yourself, ladies. Take care of yourself and others you love dearly. Thank you.